Welcome to another episode of the On with Shahan podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to catch all the newest content. Today, I have an extremely special guest. He's an entrepreneur, a mixtape specialist. He's the co-founder of Ballislife, which is one of the most viewed media companies in the world. He's also my former roommate, my groomsman, and we share the same grandpa. Thank you, Arek Kissoyan, for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be on with Shahan finally.
Thanks for coming on, man. I've been waiting a while. First, it was focused on like crypto stuff, but I wanted to open it up to entrepreneurs, celebrities, athletes, co-founders of startups, and really glad you're on. You know, for those that don't know, Arek and I are first cousins. We grew up together in the Bay Area. I saw him birth his company, Ballislife, right in front of my eyes. So it's really special to have him on. And, I want him to give his backstory, his startup journey. Arek, for those that don't know you, why don't you give them a little bit of your background of who you are, your upbringing, where you came from, and then what led you to what you're doing today?
All right. So my name is Arek Kissoyan. I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. I lived in Beirut until I was 13, almost 14, and I moved to the States. And the summer of 2001, 2 months later, 9/11 happened. So the timing of that was interesting.
Right.
So anyway, I moved to the States at 13, and I got to move in with very generous cousins of mine. One of them is sitting right here in front of me. My parents, my sister and brother were shared a wall with Shahan. The good old days. I don't know. Anyway, so Shahan kind of introduced me to American culture. He would tell me like, "Oh, this is the type of slang you have to use at school." He would be like, "You don't say all right, you say all right," and just little things like that. Anyway, throughout the transition from moving from Lebanon to the States was obviously a hard one, especially being a teenager, going to 8th grade and then into high school. You know, that's probably for a lot of people, that's the hardest years. And, I was just for me, what helped me the most probably during that time is having someone similar to my age in you, and your family, and also just kind of being ignorant to and clueless about, what was going on around me as far as like, looking back and like replaying a lot of memories and a lot of moments at school, I now realize that people were probably making fun of me, but at the time I never got it. So it kind of worked in my favor.
It worked out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it didn't get into your psyche at all, which is good.
It didn't get in my psyche. But again, so moving here, of course, one of the main things was the language barrier. Now I had learned English my whole life in Lebanon, but it's one thing to learn it in school, another thing to have to use it in practice. So I was always kind of hesitant to speak. I didn't know how people were going to react. I had an accent. It was hard for me to make friends. So throughout this whole time, basketball was kind of my escape. Basketball, and as you know, Kobe and the Lakers, I was obsessed with them.
Right.
So I just kind of dove, head first into everything basketball. And again, of course, I was a fan of basketball growing up in Lebanon, but coming to the States.
And who was the Lebanese player that you really liked? What is his name again?
Ronnie Cycli.
Ronnie Cycli.
Yeah, he's a legend.
That was your pride and joy in Lebanon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In Lebanon, when he came back to play in Lebanon and for Lebanon, like, oh man, that united the country for the first time.
Right.
Fast forward back to what we're talking about. Basketball was kind of my escape. In Lebanon, the way we consumed basketball in the NBA was through a magazine in my school library, if that, a game or two on TV if you're lucky. So even though I was a huge Kobe and Laker fan growing up in Lebanon, I'd probably only seen about 4 Laker games
Mm,
ever.
mm,
So coming here and you know your home team, it had that all 82 games are televised, and then there's the national TV games. We lived in the Bay Area, so our home team was the Warriors during their shitty years.
yeah. We used to be able to walk all the way to the front when we got
Yeah,
those big
exactly.
tickets.
You would
Yeah,
go to Warrior games to watch the other team,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but again, like just being able to watch like 27 national TV Laker games at the time was like the best thing that ever happened to me. So, and the internet, nobody had internet at home in Lebanon, and here, uh, you guys had internet, and me just being like, I would like always ask if I could check my email, but really what I was doing was checking NBA and Kobe stats. Um, so yeah, I mean, just naturally, uh, basketball was always like a big part of who I was. Um, and going through high school and just kind of like discovering uh, my passion and whatever those, or just trying many different things until something sticks. And I remember coming across a fan made Kobe video
Mm,
and looking at it. It was called Kobe Bryant Redemption. Uh, and it was after, all the his trial case in Colorado and all that, and kind of his comeback story. Came back 2 seasons or the following season, he was going back and forth in court, but the season after that, he had a historical season,
mm,
averaged 35 points a game, whatnot. So anyway, it was that season, and this video just blew my mind, and the fact that it was fan made, uh, it just kind of like a light a light went up in my brain, like oh shit, I could
mm,
do this too.
mm,
And that was the exact moment where I was like, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna dedicate myself to making basketball videos, and if it works, it works. If not, um, it'll be something good I can put on my resume. I'll gain experience, and maybe it'll lead somewhere. So that's how me getting into making basketball videos started.
And I remember when you made those first few Kobe videos, like all the family would gather and watch your videos because we were just like amazed. Like we had no idea you had this talent or like you could do
Right,
stuff like this because, we'll get into this later, but you were not really motivated in school and the classroom setting. And I think a
right.
lot of entrepreneurs are this way, but the classroom setting doesn't fit because it's within the confines of rules and structure where
Hmm.
you're a creative person and you don't want rules and structure. You want to
Right.
create your own rules and structure, which I thought was amazing. And then I felt like a lot of people saw right away that there's clearly something going on here. There's some kind of talent. Was that what led you to continue to do it, or was it that you like doing it, or was it a little bit of both?
I think everything you named had contributed to it. So yeah, like the classroom for me, uh, it was hard to maintain focus, and especially at the high school I went to, we had the block schedule, which was great. But sitting in class for 100 minutes and focusing the whole time is also challenging. Um, and what I tell people is, I spent if the effort and the time I put in to not put effort and into my work and but get it done anyway. Like if I had just spent that time to just put in the effort and study anyway, like it would have taken just as much time, or if not even less, But I just came up with like creative ways of like putting the least amount of effort into my school.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, and as far as the video, part of it was, yes, positive reinforcement and encouragement from family members and friends obviously was very gratifying, and it was definitely a contributing factor to me keep doing it. But I think for me, it was just like I get to be, I wasn't comfortable at school. I wasn't comfortable in class for, again, I had just immigrated to the States. I still didn't feel like I fully fit in. It was still so many cultural differences. But when I was at home in my room by myself on my computer, like I was in my own world, um, in a sense, I was like, that's when I could truly be myself. And that's what I just truly uh, loved about it is there were endless possibilities with the power of editing and video. Um, I have, this creativity that's just like waiting to come out, and I could channel it through video editing. So yeah, those are all factors in what made me.
So you got from those mixtapes. So move me from the mixtapes to the inception or the creation of Ball's Life, meeting Matt, your partner. How did that all happen?
Yeah, so if I didn't mention yet, I started doing a lot of basketball mixtapes. Mainly, I did mostly Kobe mixtapes, and then people were like, "How many Kobe mixtapes are you gonna do? We want to see something else." So like, I would like force myself to like throw in another player or two here and there, just so I can get back to making more Kobe mixtapes.
Right.
Um, and eventually, at the time, there wasn't YouTube. All these social media platforms weren't a thing. There were the way you would do it is upload websites like SendSpace. There were a few others similar. You would upload your video there and then post it to message forums.
Mm.
And there was like an underground uh, basketball mix makers website called mixmakers.net. And that's where people like myself kind of united. And it was pretty popular at the time. And that's where I would post my mixtapes. And it was just like nice, fun community. And eventually, I met someone there who said, "Hey, I know this guy. He started this company called Ballislife. It's not really a company at the time. He just like started this idea called Ballislife, where he wants to go film his own basketball content. So you're not just like using NBA footage. You get to actually own it, put your name on it,
Mm.
and he's looking for an editor." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm so down. This sounds amazing." So he put me in touch with Matt. And at the time, just to be clear, uh, I'm not a Balls Life co-founder, but I am a Balls Life co-owner.
Co-owner.
Um,
Okay, got it.
Balls Life was founded by Matt and a couple of buddies of his. They were young. They didn't all see eye to eye. They had different visions, or just not all of them were 100% into it. So eventually, Matt just got left with Balls Life. A few months later, I joined, um, and basically that was like for me when Balls Life really, really started. Because basically we started from scratch, like all the footage they had compiled at that point, like Matt no longer had access to. So we had to just start from zero and work our way back up. And for me, I was just looking for opportunity to edit mixtapes that basically we we owned. And owned is not the right word, but it was mine from like ground up. Like we shot the footage. Um, the fact that it was high school players, I had always been interested in where these NBA players are coming from, because as you remember, when LeBron was in high school, you and I and a few of our friends, like we talked about it, and then like I remember you calling me and waking me up one day because LeBron was on TV in the McDonald's All American Dunk Contest,
Mm.
and you didn't want me to miss it, and just it, it was so like besides the one or two times you see high school basketball and like these future NBA stars on ESPN or Sports Center, like you had no idea where they come from, and for me that was so intriguing and um, so exciting at the idea that like wow, like we get to basically go and film like all these like next LeBrons. Not to say there is necessarily next LeBron, but people like LeBron, um, and kind of document their journey to the NBA. Like I was all about that,
Mm.
and so that's how I got into with Matt and Ball's Life. And after helping Matt out and going to events with him and filming, I mean, I think he kind of saw how dedicated I was, and he basically said, "Hey, like we should be partners in this." And of course, immediately I was like, "Hell yeah!" That's how Ball's Life became what it is.
I remember all of those things happening in real time, and I remember seeing your early success in the Kobe videos, a lot of views, a lot of forums were talking about the stuff you were doing. You were building a name for yourself. Then with Ballislife, you switched to filming your own content, building, editing that, creating really cool mixtapes. And then Ballislife started to have a life of its own
Right.
and started to become like this basketball lifestyle brand. So in before it got there, and before it was starting to be known, like NBA players or college players or big high school players were retweeting, resharing all this, all the content you guys were creating. When did you see the success? Like, when did you see, hey, if we get this recipe down, if we get this formula down, and we start creating content in the way that we know how to, it's just a matter of time until we're a success. Or maybe you didn't see that and you were just like, we just love doing this and we're going to continue to do it. Did you see at some point, hey, there's something we got going on here?
For sure. I mean, for years, Ballislife was like our side hustle, a hobby that at times it was challenging, it was hard. We had to sacrifice a lot. You know, I had to find a balance between social life and like, okay, like came to a point I realized the more time I put into Ballislife, um, the more I kind of have to cancel out on social engagements and like going out and partying. And being young at the time, you know, that's really like one of the that's stuff's also very important to you. Is like, well, it's the weekend. I want to go out with my friends and cousins, and you know, my you see their pictures on MySpace, and you feel like you're missing out. Um, I think that just kind of getting to the point where realizing that, like, you know what, it's a this is a sacrifice and that I would have to make. And the reason for that is because we saw the way the basketball community was reacting to Ballislife, and how much and how like they they were they were so amazed by these mixtapes. And for me, it was like I'm editing the mixtapes, and I've seen them so many times that by the time it gets released, to me, it like doesn't even
Mm.
necessarily look good anymore. But just seeing like these basketball players react to it and like how thankful they were. A lot of these players maybe didn't get attention from colleges until Ball's Life put out a video, and all these different factors were definitely like, hey, like this is there's something here. We know it. We have to stick by it. And through all the hard times and frustrations, and you know, sometimes you go months without no real payoff. You know, and just the in the back of our mind, just knowing that, like, hey, at least the basketball world loves what we're doing, and they are 100% behind us was definitely a motivating factor.
Yeah, and I think a big part of what I saw as well, in terms of like you building this community and the love from the basketball community, is when I like sometimes went to the games with you, I would notice that you would have relationships with not only the players but their entire family. And
Right,
so it wasn't just a fan with the players, it was everyone in the family, because to your point, some of these players didn't get any exposure. No one was covering these games, no one was covering high school. So not only did you get them exposure, you gave them an amazing piece of content and mixtape for them to use to show different schools or different people that were looking at them. And as a byproduct, a lot of the family really got behind what you were doing too, to which not only did you get this like whole like all these different classes of students that were playing, but you also got all the families and probably their
right,
siblings and all that stuff too. Which that over time, I feel like really you guys built a community of people that really love what you're doing.
for sure. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy to me that sometimes I would go to games and I wasn't the most social person. And again, I think, like I said, moving here at the age I did, um, I was very, I was always very insecure in my like, um, in my communication skills, I guess. And I never really I never really addressed those. So again, graduating high school and like into my adulthood, uh, I if I could avoid talking to people, I would
Right.
avoid talking to people. So like I would go to these games. I would just try to like be as invisible as possible, do my thing, and leave. But slowly people were coming up to me, uh, players coming up to me, talking to me, and then eventually family members coming up to me, family friends coming up to me, the student sections coming up to me. Now the student sections, I'm becoming friends with kids in the student sections, and I mean it was just insane. And in a way, like I would go to these some of these schools, and I would feel like it was home,
Mm.
and that was just incredible to me in a way where I was living in Southern California, away from my family, um, and I kind of like missed that home feeling. And yeah, basketball was, and a lot of these gyms were like kind of like my sanctuary in a way where I could kind of now not it's not just at home in front of the computer where I feel the most comfortable and like I can be myself. Now it's like these basketball gyms that I'm going to, and just people embracing me was just incredible.
Yeah. And I can't imagine you doing a corporate job. Like if you did some
Right.
type of corporate job, like I couldn't even. You did work at Chuck E. Cheese at one time. I don't know if
Oh
people know
yeah,
this.
for two
Yeah,
years I worked
yeah.
at Chuck E. Cheese.
I think they're going under, by the way, and they should. That
Yeah.
place, that those dancing robots scare the crap out of me. But I could never see you in a corporate job. And I think that, you mentioned a lot of things of how you had like a tough transition from Lebanon to here and trouble communicating, but your love for basketball, then doing the editing, you're able to communicate in different ways. Have you ever thought about what you would do if life was different, or you were in Lebanon, or maybe that wasn't an issue, the communication skills or whatnot? I mean, I feel like it led to you to ultimately what you were going to do best. But have you ever thought about if you had a corporate job, what you would do?
Yeah, I do think about that a lot. I don't know what I would do if I had a corporate job, but I think whenever I go down that train of thought, eventually the conclusion I come to is just the realization that like, wow, I'm so thankful
Right.
that this was the path my life led to, because I can't even imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, I couldn't
Yeah,
see you at all in that kind of environment. And that's
yeah,
not to say anything about your work ethic or your work product or any of that. It's just you've designed your work style and your work efforts to your skills and strengths,
right.
which I think, to your point, is why you kind of ended up, I think, by design though, in a way, in a setup that you really enjoy. So to that point, um, so as I talked to a lot of different startups. I've talked to tons of startup, hundreds, if not maybe even thousands, over the last 4 or 5 years. And it's not an easy journey to do a startup. And then a lot of these startups even get venture funding, which like gives them a lot of runway, a lot of cushion to do the things they need. You didn't have any of that. You didn't have any of the cushion. You made a lot of sacrifices. We talked about this a little bit briefly a little bit earlier. But it's not always easy. Like we see you where you are now, but there was so much that you did, so many hotel rooms where probably like 4 or 5 guys in the hotel room. You guys are all staying in cities you've never stayed in before. You're trying to capture content of a player maybe in a remote place. You're trying to work with teams distributed all over the place. There's other people that are maybe trying to do what you're doing, maybe copy what you're doing. It's not an easy thing. So, a lot of things I like to ask founders, especially really successful ones like yourself, is how do you stay motivated? How do you have an optimistic and positive mindset throughout that? And how does that help you push forward in what you're doing?
I feel like it was just, first of all, you saying that being in hotel rooms with this many people, and like I just want to tell you how true that is, because there were so many times where I would be in a hotel room in like middle of nowhere, in like Kentucky or somewhere, and just like thinking to myself like, what the am I doing here? Like places where like you taxi take you have if you want a taxi, it takes maybe like 50 minutes for them to arrive. You know, that's in the middle of nowhere, and you're just like, what am I doing here? And those moments right there, it lead to a lot of like self reflecting and into what you're doing. And I think in those moments you kind of just get reminded that like, and you know, you kind of like when you have those thoughts, you're trying to like kind of like reverse yourself back into like, okay, like what am I doing here? Okay, well, I'm here because all is life. You know, we do this and that. Like you think about like all the positive things you've done. I helped this player. You know, I was at this game. Like this mixtape dropped, and this is how people reacted to it. I remember so and so telling me that like they didn't have a college off any college offers, and the Ball Life mixtape dropped, and now there's 10 coaches contacting them. I remember the first Ball Life T-shirt we released. How we sold out at a tournament, and to me that was just crazy because like I never thought that like you don't really being an internet based company and you're not interacting with people face to face, it's hard besides comments, it's hard to sometimes grasp like how far the reach of Balls Life is, how much you've affected people, how people feel towards you, and just kind of thinking about these moments, being in a hotel room by yourself and just like thinking like what are you doing with your life and just kind of like again backtracking and like think going back in reverse and like remembering all the good positive things you've done.
So I had a question on that train of thought. How do you cancel out the noise of haters or people that think you're crazy? Because even early on when you started, you didn't have a traditional job. So although we did see talent, we thought, what is he doing? Or like, what is this thing that he's doing? Is he actually going to be able to have a career from this? He's not that focused in school. Like all these things. Turns out everybody was wrong, but you were able to cancel out or muffle that noise, that and you didn't allow it to come through and affect the change in your actions.
Hmm.
So how did you go about doing that? Is that because you didn't care? Is that because you learned to not care what other people say? I mean, how did you go about doing that?
I didn't. Yes, I didn't care definitely, and I didn't care because like I was all of these things that we had already talked about, like me being antisocial and kind of secluded. I would all feel at home the most when I was by myself in my room. I think this kind of developed the type of mentality in me that where it was like, you know what? I can see why people feel this way because a like I don't tell them anything. All they see is like I'm just in my room all the time. Um, you know, not the best grades in school. So I could totally see where people were coming from. I never really took it as like why don't people believe in me? But it was just like, you know what? I I believe in myself. Um, and to me, it was always also the thing was I'm gonna keep doing ball is life because I feel like I'm gaining experience. I'm developing a skill that I could always use. If ball is life doesn't work out, I can take these the skills I've learned and take it into something else, and it'll lead to something else. Which um, you know, we did get contracted by the NBA for 2 or 3 summers to do their whole video production for the Showdown tour. You
That's
know,
right. Yeah.
so I mean, I think that once we got that, that was just kind of confirmed my my thought process of like again, if ball life doesn't work out, I'm developing these skills that I'll find success in something else in life. Um, so yeah, that was really it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I wanted to, I wanted to cover basketball as well while we're here. There's a lot of startup stuff we covered. You watch so much basketball, more basketball than anybody. So much so that you don't play NBA 2K with me because you don't want to play basketball related games.
Right.
So we play what is it called? Call of Duty,
Warzone?
Warzone. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I want to know your top five. Like, if you had to have a top five NBA basketball players of all time,
Mhm.
Who's in your top five? Don't be political. I want the real answers. Who is in your NBA all-time greatest basketball players top five?
All right, I'm gonna give you my top five speaking from the heart, and my top five speaking from my mind.
Okay,
Okay, speaking from the heart, my top five is Kobe, LeBron, Jordan, Shaq, and I don't really have a fifth one. I mean, I can name one of the like generic
Paul
words.
Pierce. Paul,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I can name like not generic by the way. What I mean is I can say Bird, Magic, all these
Or
players that I've
Kareem. Yeah,
never
right.
watched ever in my life. So any one of those. But if I'm speaking from like objective standpoint, where like if I'm really being honest with myself, it would be Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, Jack. Um, again, that's I'll give you four because
Tim Duncan. Would you put Tim
okay,
Duncan
I'll
in
put
there?
Tim Duncan. I'll put Tim Duncan there, but I have to say this on record. It bugs me so much when I see people put Tim Duncan over Kobe in their lists, and they like to bring the fact up that like, oh, he's been so consistent for so long and like so efficient, and like yes, like Kobe had some issues of shooting the ball when he shouldn't have a bunch of times and whatnot, but I think people forget that Tim Duncan kind of like not disappeared. He's been consistent, but he was just in a good situation
Yep.
his all his career. I'm pretty sure he never won. I don't think they ever won a back to back.
I don't think so.
Um, let alone a three-peat. There was a big gap between. I mean, there was like a good 6 to 7 years where Tim Duncan was not really talked about in the top two or three or four players in the NBA from I believe since the championship they won against Pistons or was it the Cavs? No, when they beat LeBron up until the next championship they won, like they were just like uh he was just kind of like gone about, and then Tony Parker getting Finals MVP, Kawhi Leonard getting Finals MVP. Like if this was Kobe, Kobe would have got annihilated if somebody else on his team got Finals MVP. But
Right.
with Tim Duncan, nobody really bothers mentioning it.
Right.
Where and with Kobe consistently from 2001 up until the day he injured his Achilles, like top two, top three players in the NBA conversation nonstop. Top 1 to 3 player in the NBA conversation. When Shaq was winning Finals MVPs, I mean, Shaq himself was saying Kobe's the best player in the world. Kobe's numbers with those playoff series, I think people kind of forget. They say, "Oh, he had Shaq," but I mean, Kobe was putting up some insane historic numbers too. Stuff. Anyway, just wanted to get that off my chest and on record.
Yeah, I was never a fan of Tim Duncan. I always say it because other people say it in their top five. But I would agree with your Kobe, Shaq, LeBron. Who's the other one you had in the fourth? Kobe, Shaq, LeBron.
Jordan.
Uh, who?
Jordan.
Jordan. Yeah, right. Jordan. And the fifth is tough. I don't know if I have a fifth either. If I had to put one, I'd probably put Magic.
Mhm.
Although I didn't see him play, I think he changed the game from like a point forward perspective, and he won a lot of rings. So I think he should be in the mix. So you guys, in terms of what Ballislife is doing, it's really tough right now because the coronavirus. There isn't any games being played. You
Right.
guys have more content than probably you could use in years from now. All the content you have, but you guys have done some really interesting things within e-gaming and esports, and you're just experimenting and dabbling with that. So what was the thought process behind doing that? I mean, it could have just been a fun thing, but I think it's really catching some steam now. You guys are playing Call of Duty, some other games online right now. So what was the
Yeah.
thought process behind that?
I think it was something getting into gaming and just kind of having like a Twitch channel was something we had talked about actually probably as far back as like early 2018. But us being limited in resources in a way where like something like Twitch, where it's just like, yes, it sounds like a good idea, but as far as our resources go, it's probably like somewhere in the bottom of the list of like where we're going to allocate our resources to.
Right.
So it's always a thought in the back of our head, and I think um, with the lockdowns and everything, we just felt like, hey, if there's a time to do it, now is the time. Everyone's at home. Call of Duty Warzone is like as popular as ever. A and B, it's free to play for everyone,
Right.
and we have this relationship with all these players. So our one of our main guys, Tom, he kind of took on the responsibility and the challenge, and yeah, he put together this amazing Call of Duty tournament with the best high school basketball players. And it was a I think the goal at the beginning was to have 10 teams, and I mean, once it started, and he started asking teams. More and more people showed interest.
Mm.
Turned into a 20-team tournament. And we had, I mean, you name it. We had Reef O'Neal, Bronny, Dylan Suggs, Josh Christopher. These are, some of the most popular high school and the best high school basketball players around. And I'm forgetting a lot of them, but I mean, it was just like an awesome, cool little community thing that we did.
Right.
And yeah, that's just kind of how like I said, we thought it was the perfect time to finally get to do the gaming stuff. And I mean, moving forward, the internet has changed so much. It's like at some point you have to get into gaming. I mean, even NBA teams are invested into
Hmm.
sports and esports teams, so it's a no brainer.
Right. Yeah, and I think you captured it at just the right time. I always look at startups at what they're doing during this time, how they're innovating, how they're experimenting with different things. And you guys tried it, and it was clear that you guys were thinking about it for some time. And then when you executed it, everyone got involved in it. And we've been playing a lot of Warzone. Pretty
Right.
good.
Yeah.
If
The
you guys
master of
don't
running people over.
know.
Do you call yourself the Uber driver from hell?
Yeah, exactly. So any vehicle, whether it's a helicopter, it's a truck, it's a little ATV, I just go while everyone else is really good at playing games. I can't aim. So what I do is while you guys are shooting at them, I just go
Yeah.
back and I try to run them over.
Yeah, you're basically our distraction
Yeah,
for the enemy team.
we have won a few times. So
Yeah, we have. It's
for the
surprising.
record. So how do we check out Ballislife, your website, all the different channels? I know that you guys have an apparel shop too with really cool apparel.
Yeah.
How do we go follow that? How do we check that out?
So our apparel you can check out you can go to Balls Life and click on shop, or you can go directly to shop.ballislife.com. You can check us out on YouTube. Just type in Balls Life, and it'll be the first one that pops up. On Instagram, it's at Ball is Life. Twitter is at Ball is Life. Facebook is at Ball is Lifestyle. We're on TikTok now too at Ball is Life. I'm sure we're a few other places that I'm forgetting right now, but yeah, just type in Ball is Life on any platform you're on, and it'll pop up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arek Kissoyan. We'd love to have you on again in a few months to see all the new updates. Thanks a lot for joining, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.